Well, he is an illegal alien who has been living illegally in our country from El Salvador. ICE testified, an immigration judge ruled he was a member of MS-13, an appellate judge ruled he was a member of MS-13. Hard stop. He should not be in our country.
So there it is, Attorney General Pam Bondi telling reporters in the room Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was deported to El Salvador from the United States, is not coming back to the United States.
Just yesterday, the Department of Homeland Security releasing new information that shows Garcia's wife had filed a domestic violence restraining order against her husband in 2021. And it said he had a history of violence. Now, Abrego Garcia's attorney said the allegations never led to a conviction. And now we have reaction to the restraining order resurfacing from Garcia's wife. And again, writing here, this via Casa, saying, in part, after surviving domestic violence in a previous relationship, she filed for a temporary protective order out of caution after a disagreement with Abrego Garcia in case things escalated. Things did not escalate, and I decided not to follow through with the civil court process. She said they were able to work through the situation privately as a family, which included going to counseling to strengthen their marriage. With that, let's welcome in John Torres, former ICE acting director, and Andy Ngo, senior editor at the Post Millennial. Welcome, gentlemen, and thanks for coming on today. So, Andy, I'd noticed you'd taken interest in the original 2021 restraining order. At this hour, we've got the very latest statement from the wife of Abrego Garcia. Your thoughts on what's going on right now and where things stand?
Well, Ms. Jennifer Vasquez's statement now would contradict what she put on the record in 2021. Then she submitted in a sworn statement to the court that she was afraid for her life and the safety of the child that she has with Mr. Garcia. And she details a pattern of alleged brutal violence in her that includes him retaliating against her and the child by driving recklessly in a vehicle after she asked him to pay for gasoline, that he put his body weight on her and the child, and when she pushed him off, that he bloodied her. She alleged that he ripped off her clothes and grabbed her arm in such a manner when she tried to run away for help that left her with injuries. These are documented in her own statements that she has never mentioned to the press, as she's now gone on a media tour, in my opinion, also to promote the GoFundMe, which has pulled in hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, interesting point. John, to Andy's point, DHS officials even confirming that because they wrote about that, saying Kilmar Abrego Garcia had a history of violence, was not the upstanding, quote, Maryland man the media has portrayed him as. According to court filings, Garcia's wife sought a domestic violence restraining order against him, claiming he punched, scratched, and ripped off her shirt, among other harm. This MS-13 gang member is not a sympathetic figure, end quote. So obviously DHS got their hands on it. They summarized it. They put it out here. John, did you want to comment on how this is being portrayed in the media? A sympathetic figure, a Maryland man, a father, a husband. We've got senators flying to El Salvador, visiting the prison, trying to get him out of the prison. John, your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, the irony is pretty rich here that, to talk about that point of getting a restraining order for domestic violence, starting with that, federal agents who have those types of accusations made against them are not able to continue in their job and not allowed to carry a gun. Yet what we're saying here is he's really a upstanding Maryland father, which of course the media, certain segments of the media are going to portray that in the most sympathetic light and ignore the facts that would really paint the entire picture clearly for everyone to see here, especially the fact that, judges, an immigration judge and an appellate judge have actually found him to be a member of MS-13, which is a notoriously violent gang, and that he is here illegally and was issued a final order of deportation by an immigration judge. But for the fact that he made the claim that if he were to be sent back to El Salvador, rival gangs would harm him. And then the judge stayed that order and said, that the U.S. government can't send him back to El Salvador. And that's where they talk about the clerical error. It's not as if they sent back a person who has a green card or is a U.S. citizen.
Right.
They sent the person back to El Salvador who is an El Salvadoran citizen.
Right. And they mentioned that country in particular because he might be met with a rival gang member, which, again, as we point out, you got to be part of the gang if you're going to be met with a rival gang concern there. Either way, you've got the Maryland Senator Van Hollen taking a trip there, although he wasn't able to meet up with Abrego Garcia because the vice president of the country said, you got to call ahead of time. We got to go through certain things. But Andy, you know, you're covering all of this story play out, and this seems to be a Democrat sort of resistance plan because Van Hollen said he's not going to be the only one who wants to make this journey. What stands out to you about how Democrats are approaching this story?
I was particularly moved by the statements of Rachel Morin's mother, the Maryland mother of 5 who was brutally murdered by a illegal migrant. And her family did not get support from politicians in her state or by Democrats nationally. I think it's reflective of the sanctioning, martyring, whatever you want to call it, of Mr. Garcia. We've seen that in the past with other figures who have dubious backgrounds. And I think the allegations, at least about the domestic violence, should not be overlooked. The court in Maryland at the time did find that her claims were reasonable grounds for him to be forcibly removed from the family home. The court viewed him as a immediate danger to the mother of his child and as well as his wife. And he was barred from that home as well as Miss Vasquez's mother's property and was ordered to turn over any weapons that he had. So I wonder why the story that she's telling now about him being this amazing father, what other motives she has. I do think politics are involved, and of course we can see live on the GoFundMe how much money is involved.
Yeah, and John, that goes to, you know, the broader issue of, again, you know, those here illegally in the United States and those that could face deportation, and you have, again, media embracing this particular story. And again, not one, now you're seeing more congressional leaders that serve American citizens, constituents, seemingly trying to help those that are here illegally, even leaving the country to do so, John. Ever seen anything like that?
Yeah, sadly, I've seen it throughout my career. And a few of us had discussions before President Trump took office, especially when the border czar Tom Homan was talking about launching the largest mass deportation effort ever. We made the comments, well, you're going to see ICE actually going back to work here within the first few days. And in the next few days after that, you'll see segments of the media portraying the most sympathetic stories that they can find out there. And that is something that has taken place throughout my career, where they won't talk about the criminals that are being removed or the potential terrorists, or now, as you see, the gang members are designated as terrorist groups. They're not talking about that, meaning the certain segments of the media.
Right.
But they will certainly go find that very sympathetic person and say, hey, they're just here for a better life, and this one person should not be deported. But they want that to impact the other 100,000 that may be deported, and it's clearly painting the wrong picture.
Yeah. It's also so predictable, right? Not giving airtime to Patty Morin, again, who spoke at the press briefing yesterday, or Rachel's story overall, which we've been covering for years now in an effort to seek justice. By the way, her killer was found guilty in a Maryland court, which is absolutely reassuring news, but got hardly any media coverage by the mainstream. John Torres, Andy No, thanks so much for coming on today.
And I know this is a sensitive question, but I have to ask it. You did take out a temporary order of protection against your husband in 2021. Were you in fear of your husband?
My husband is alive. That's all I can say.
Okay.